U.S. forces capture Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro in large-scale military strike on Caracas. Caracas, Venezuela. In a dramatic escalation of geopolitical tensions, United States military forces launched a series of large-scale strikes across the Venezuelan capital early Saturday morning, leading to the unprecedented capture of President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores. The operation, which began under the cover of darkness, has plunged the South American nation into a state of emergency and uncertainty, marking the most significant U.S. military intervention in Latin America in decades. The city under siege. The first explosions were recorded at approximately 1:50 a.m. local time, 12:50 a.m. Eastern Time. CNN correspondents on the ground reported hearing at least 7 powerful blasts that shook buildings and shattered windows across Caracas. "One was so strong, my window was shaking after it," said CNN and Español correspondent Osmari Hernandez. Witnesses described the roar of low-flying aircraft and helicopters over the city as plumes of smoke rose from strategic locations, including the La Carlota airbase and the Fort Tayuna military complex. Large portions of the city, particularly in the southern neighborhoods, were plunged into darkness as power outages followed the strikes. The capture of Maduro. Hours after the initial bombardment, U.S. President Donald Trump announced the success of the mission via Truth Social. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolás Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country, the president wrote. He described the raid as a brilliant operation conducted in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Sources familiar with the matter indicated that the elite U.S. Army Delta Force, supported by an FBI unit, executed the extraction. Maduro and Flores were reportedly taken from their residence within the Fort Tayuna complex and flown to a U.S. military facility. By Saturday evening, Maduro had arrived at a National Guard base in New York, where he is expected to face trial on federal charges of narcoterrorism and cocaine trafficking. Casualties and resistance. While the U.S. Department of Defense reported that no American lives were lost, though a handful of troops sustained minor shrapnel wounds, the toll on the ground in Venezuela appears far higher. Initial reports from Venezuelan officials and international news agencies suggest at least 40 people, including both soldiers and civilians, were killed in the strikes. Venezuela's defense minister, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, condemned the operation as a criminal military aggression and an outrageous invasion. "No cowardly attack will prevail against the strength of this people," added Foreign Minister Yvonne Gil-Pinto, who requested an urgent meeting of the United Nations Security Council. Political vacuum and global reaction. In the wake of the capture, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has called for mass mobilization and the immediate release of Maduro, though President Trump suggested in a press conference that Washington would temporarily run the country to ensure a judicious transition. The international community is sharply divided. While U.S. allies have expressed varying degrees of concern, Russia and Iran have vehemently denounced the attack. The Russian Foreign Ministry called it an act of armed aggression, while Iran stated it violated the UN Charter and Venezuelan sovereignty. Context of the conflict. The strikes follow months of Operation Southern Spear, a U.S.-led maritime campaign intended to cripple drug smuggling networks and pressure the Maduro administration. In recent weeks, the U.S. had imposed a naval blockade on Venezuelan oil tankers and conducted a CIA-led drone strike on a port facility, signaling the shift from economic sanctions to direct kinetic action. As Caracas remains under a state of emergency, the world watches to see how the remaining Venezuelan military leadership will respond and what the future holds for a nation now without its longtime leader.